is Margaret Ann Gatewood. I've always been called Peggy. I didn't know my name was Margaret until I was 10 years old, and I felt so foolish not knowing what my own name was. Well, I always wanted to be a lawyer because I worked for one while I was in high school. And I guess it didn't seem unusual to me because I had been around law and lawyers for so long, but it must have seemed unusual to other people. I can remember when I worked at Green Hall in Lawrence, old Green Hall, um, that one of the older professors there was a real curmudgeon, you know. Um, Roth and I were walking down the front steps of the law school. I don't know, I guess we were married by then. And this old professor looked at Roth and he said, "Keep that woman out of law school." And so, law was no mystery. I thought it was just a wonderful problem-solving system. And before that, in high school, I thought I wanted hard sciences. I started out as a chem major, and I liked hard sciences because there were answers, there weren't any gray areas. And then as I, hung around the law more, I found out there's a way to deal with these gray areas and, solve problems that have multi-ingredients. My first husband was not that excited about me going to law school because the prevailing sentiment was by the male lawyers was, women have no place here. And, since I sort of had seen legal practice from the inside in several different situations as a practitioner and clerk and for a court and everything, why, it just seemed a natural and for me. And so when he said that, I just ignored him. By that time, let's see, I was very surprised. I graduated from law school, or from undergrad in 1954, mid-50s, and then went back to law school 9 years later, and still there were not a whole lot of women, but I really didn't have any problems. I enjoyed the whole thing, and I liked to write, and which is absolutely necessary. And so people who didn't like to write or hadn't written much struggled a lot more than I did. So I don't know, I enjoyed all of the classes. Contracts seemed very, very boring. But torts was great. Procedure was even pretty good. And because it was all geared toward fairness and everybody having a chance to present their story. And so, there was no part of it that was very hard for me. Several students asked me, "Well, what are you going to do with your law degree?" And, I said, "I don't know, hang it on the wall or something," because they knew I had 3 little kids at home, and my husband had a very good job, and so it was before it was absolutely necessary to have 2 incomes to raise a family. These were, I guess, back in the good old days, because if a woman was going to work, it was purely either she was single or her husband didn't have a good job. And I think that's part of the prejudice, and that is somehow or other it reflected on the husband's earning ability. And, and that had never occurred to me. I graduated in 3 years, even though I was a part-time student, because I went in the summer. And so that was, graduation was really a great thing. I went to work for the Supreme Court. And the hardest thing, was going out and interviewing and, looking for a job. And so I knew a guy who worked for the Supreme Court in the clerk's office, and he said, "Oh, no, come up there. They're always looking for lawyers, clerks." And so I did, and went around to a couple of offices, and it was just no problem. And then I would get bored with the job I had. And so I switched jobs about every 4 or 5 years. And so I never made much money practicing law. And, but that was all right. I liked a lot of the parts about private practice. And I liked the part, I would see clients who got crosswise with the law or somehow, and I think, now if I'd worked for that corporation, I could have kept that from happening. They need a good in-house lawyer. And so that was always my theory, that if they just had a good in-house lawyer, they could stay out of trouble. Well, the job I had with a very specialized insurance broker disabused me of that, that if they know the law, they'll stay out of trouble. Not true. There's a lot of social worker in most lawyers, and solving problems, and and law students almost always have a great sense of humor. They can stand back from life and see different viewpoints. Personality has so much to do with practicing law. And the law uses all of your personality and all of your brain. I guess the best thing is being around other attorneys, and being around people who were not locked into any particular opinion. They were used to the idea that you could look at both sides of a question and not be either disloyal or un-American or whatever, some kind of extremist, or irreligious, and look at both sides. Wasn't a bad thing, it was a good thing. And that was the most pleasing thing to me about being a lawyer, was being around other lawyers.